Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. Happy Sabbath to those that are worshiping today, and those that are going to join in later, happy Sabbath as well. So we're going to do a study today. It's not in any of the series, but this study is an impromptu study as well, just like last week when we talked about the God of our salvation. But today we're going to do another study, and the title, as you can see, it is Well in Christ, and that's the study that we're going to have. So we'll adapt the study from 2 Kings chapter 4. We'll read through to 35, 38, somewhere there. That's where the study will come from. So I'll start by reading through the story that is in the Bible. And this is a story of Elisha, not Elijah, but Elisha and the Shunammite woman. And that's where the adaptation of the study is coming from. So we'll read through the story, then we'll spend time going through slowly but surely through the study. So the Bible says in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8 through to 38. I'll read through, then we'll spend time going through. It says, "And it fell on a day that Elisha passed by Shunem, where there was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was that often as he passed by, he turned in hither to eat bread." So this is the scene which is being sent. Continuing, it says, "And she said unto her husband, Behold, now I perceive that this is a holy man of God, which passes by us continuously. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, a table, and a stool, and a candle, and it shall be that when he cometh unto us, he shall turn in hither." So she makes a plan. She talks to the husband, says, let's make this room where this man of God would come in. "And it fell on a day that he came in hither, and he turned unto the chamber and laid there. And he said unto Gehazi his servant," so this time around, he is not alone. Elisha is not alone. He's with Gehazi his servant. So far we've been introduced to 4 characters in the story. There is the Shunammite woman, and then there's the husband, there's Elisha, and then there's the servant to Elisha, who is Gehazi. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 12, going down, continues saying, thank you, Howard, for watching. It says, "And he said unto Gehazi his servant, Call this Shunammite woman. When he had called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, Say unto her, Behold, thou hast been careful with us in all this care. What is to be done for thee? Would thou that you be spoken to the king or the captain of the host? And she answered and said, I dwell amongst my own people." So the prophet of God, Elisha, says to Gehazi, "Go and call the Shunammite woman. She has been so good and gracious and careful to welcome us. So what is it that she would like for us to do for her?" Then he goes ahead and makes a proposal. He says, "Do you want us to speak to the king?" Now remember, Elisha was in favor with the king, with the captain of hosts, if you read the previous verses. And then she answered, and that answer is quite amazing. She says, "Behold, I dwell amongst my own people. I think I'm comfortable, I'm content with what I have." Verse 14, it says, "And he said, What then is it to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, Verily, she has no child." This is Gehazi responding. He says, she has no child, and her husband is old. Now, this is setting up the story in such a way that we do not miss it. No child, the husband is old. So already, as a Bible student, you're going to those verses where a woman has no child, maybe she's older, and also the husband is old. Continuing saying, the Bible continues and says, "And he said, Call her." This is Elisha says, "Call her." And when he had called her, she stood in the door. That is a significant verse. She stood in the door. Continuing verse 16 of 2 Kings, it says, And he said, about this season, according to the time of life. About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, Nay, my Lord, thou art a man of God. Why would thou lie unto thy maiden servant? So remember, the woman has got no child. Gehazi reports the story to Elisha. She has got no child. So Elisha calls the child, calls the woman, and the woman comes. And he says, according to, about this season, according to the time of life, you're going to embrace a male child. And she says, no, my Lord, why would you lie? You're a man of God. Verse 17, and the woman conceived and bore a son at that season that Elisha had said, according to the time of life. That phrase is important. We'll go back to it. And as it and in anything, sorry, I was actually reading the next. Let's go to the next verse, verse 18. And when the child was grown up, it fell on a day that he went out to his father. He went out to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, my head, my head. And the father said, carry the lad to his mother. To his mother. Verse 20. And when he had taken him, he brought him to his mother, and he sat on her laps or her knees until it was noon, and he died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him and went out. So the son dies. She goes out and puts him in the room, the chamber that they have made with her husband for this man of God. And then she goes out and laid him on the bed there. And she called her husband and said, send me, I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God and come again. And the husband said, wherefore wilt thou go unto him today? It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath. And she says, it shall be well. And that's where the title of our message is coming from. It shall be well. We'll spend time looking at what that means. And she saddled upon an ass, and she said unto her servant, drive and go forward, slack not thy ride for me, except that I bid thee. So she went and came to the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, listen now, it says, and it came to pass, when the man of God saw her far off, before she even reached near, he said unto Gehazi his servant, behold, yonder is the Shulamite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with thy child? And she answered Gehazi, it is well. It is well. Continuing verse 27, it says, and when she came near to the man of God to the hill, Mount Carmel, she caught him by the feet, but Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God says, leave her alone, for her soul is vexed within her. And then he says, the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me. Verse 28, and she said, did I desire a son, my Lord? Did I desire a son, my Lord? And I say, and did I not say, you do not deceive me? Then the man of God said to Gehazi, get up thy loins and take up thy staff in thine hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not. If they salute you back to you, do not salute them to them. And he laid upon his staff, and he says, this is the instruction that Gehazi was given. He says, and lay my staff upon the face of the child who was died. We'll go back and look at these verses more carefully. Verse 30, I'm just reading through the chapter focus of our study today. 2 Kings chapter 4, we're reading through to 38. When verse 30 it says, and the mother of the child said, as the Lord liveth, as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So she says, I'm not going to leave you. And he rose up and followed her. We'll go back and look at the meaning of that. So continuing the verses in 31, it says, and Gehazi passed by before them. He left them behind and laid the staff on the face of the child. Gehazi is the zealous servant of God who goes ahead with the staff. And he lays upon the staff upon the face of the child, and there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him, and told them, saying, the child is not awake. We'll go back and look at that verse more carefully. And when Elisha came unto the house, and behold, the child was dead, laying upon his bed. And he went thereof and shut the door upon the twine and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up and laid upon the child, and he put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Then he returned and walked the house to and fro, and he went up and stretched himself upon the child, and the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. Verse 36. And he called Gehazi and said, call this Shunammite woman, I mean. So he called her, and when she had come in unto him, he said, take up thy child. Then, verse 37, then she went in and fell upon his feet and bowed herself to the ground and took her child and went away. So now what we're going to do is go back and look at these verses more carefully, so that we see the lesson that we have to get from it and what God has in store for us. So here is the sin, here is the scenario. A woman, Shunammite woman, the child dies. So he says, let's go back to verse 8 now. It says, and it fell upon a day that Elisha came to Shunan. Now the word Shunan, it means double rest or double peace. That's what the word means. It means double rest. So when Elisha went upon this day unto this place which is called Shunan, which means double rest, there was a great woman, this woman, the Shunammite woman, and she constrained him. She actually lay hold of him and begged him to stay so that he can eat bread. So the husband and her, because all the time when Elisha would pass, they said, well, let's make a chamber for him while he would sleep. Now there come a time when she cries out, when the servant of God, Elisha, says, this woman has been so good to us. Let's go ahead and see what we can do for her. Does she want us to speak to the king? Does she want us to speak to the captain of hosts on her behalf? But let's pick up the verse in verse 15. And she came upon, and Gehazi called her. And when he had called her, she stood upon the door. It's like standing upon the door. Jesus says, I am the door. I am the way. He is the door. He is the way. And the door is a representation again of judgment. So she stands there and he says, this season, according to the time of life. That phrase, the time of life, life itself is bounded upon in eternity. There is no life. Our life is shortened in this structure of life. But here is a promise that comes from the man of God. It says, according to the time of life, life is bound up in eternal life. So this is communicating to us the idea of an eternal covenant. That this life that this woman is going to give birth to, this life that is going to come out of her, is according to the eternal covenant. This is re-echoing the everlasting promise covenant of our Savior. He says, you're going to embrace a child, and then she doubts. This is the same thing that happened when you go back to Genesis, right? If you go back to Genesis chapter 18, God tells Sarah, you're going to have a child, and then she laughs. It's the same thing, because it was too good to be true that God is going to give them a child at such an age. So let's read something from that story, because from Abraham's story and where Isaac was born, we find the everlasting covenant, which is the gospel itself, the covenant that God established. We see it being re-echoed in this story where it says, according to the time of life, and we say that time is bounded up in eternity. God sets the bounds of time. So let's go back to Genesis chapter 18, verse 14. We'll read through to verse 19. It says, is there anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return unto thee according to the time of life. Again, the same phrase, we find it when God is making this covenant. He says, is there anything too hard for the Lord? And Sarai shall have a son. Verse 18. And when Sarai shall have a son. So this is the covenant promise that we're seeing being re-echoed, right? So let's go back to 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 18, read through to 19, when we spend time looking at those two verses together. So she was promised that she was going to have a child, and she did have a child, this male child who was born. So when the male child was born, it says when the child was grown, it fell upon a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. Now, remember Jesus talks about the reapers being in the field and their few, right? He says, pray thee to the Father. The Father is with the reapers. The Father is nowhere but in the field where the people are with the reapers. So the Son comes in upon a certain day, a certain appointed day. It's a specific day. And he said unto his father, he's addressing his father. He says, my head, my head, my head. And he said, carry the lad to his mother. So we spend time looking at that expression, my head, my head. Now that's a peculiar expression. It was at the season of the time when the harvest was being carried out and the reapers are there, they're reaping. So meaning that the sun was up in the sky. So when the sun was up in the sky, this sun is suffering from what is called heat stroke from the sun, because of the time of the season of the reaping. And he cries out, he says, my head, my head, my head, my head. Is there such an expression in the Bible as well that relates to this son that cries out when the father is with the reapers in the field, that cries out, my head, my head? We'll look at that. We know that the son is a representation of judgment. It's a representation of the judgment. And this is the sun under judgment, under the scorching heat of the sun. The sun is hitting the sun, and the sun is crying out, my head, is under judgment. This is the same cry that Jesus, the Son, made when he was on Calvary, when he was under the judgment of God. The judgments when he bore the transgression and the sins of his people and the sins of the whole world. Under the judgment of God, he cried out, he says, my God, my God. And we know the head is a representation of God himself. The same way this son cries out, my head, he cries out to the Father. So let's look at these expressions as well that are expressed on Calvary. Let's go back to the book of Psalms chapter 22, we'll read verse 1. It says, unto the chief musician of Aisha, the shadow of this is the Psalm of David. It says, my God, my head, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me and from the words of my rolling? And you go back and look at the Gospels, you begin to see this is the very expression that is being used. Let's read Matthew chapter 25, verse 46. It says, and about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which being translated, my God, my head, why hast thou forsaken me? In Mark chapter 15, verse 34, it says, and at the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice saying, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which being translated, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's the same thing that the son cries out when he's in the field with the father. Under the sun, the scorching heat of the judgment, it's the same expression when he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Under the weight of judgment, the scorching reality of the sun, he cries out. And the father responds and says, carry him to his mother. Jerusalem, the mother, that great woman, Jerusalem is a picture of her, which is a composition of God's people. Carry him to his mother, the great city, that mother of us all. So let's go to 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 20. We pick up the story. After he cried out and they say, carry him to his mother. And it says, and he was taken him and brought him to his mother, and he sat on her knees until noon, and he died. And we know Jesus died under the noon. When it was noon, he died. The darkness came in when it was noon. And he went up and laid him, and she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him and went out. So this woman, instead of going to bury him, she goes and takes him to the very chamber, the chamber that they have made with the husband for this man of God, and puts him there. And what does she do? Verse 22. And she went unto her husband and says, send me, I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, and I may run to the man of God and come again. And then he said in verse 23, he says, where wilt thou go up to him? Why are you going to him at this awkward day? It's neither the new moon or the Sabbath. You see, there was a restriction to how, when, and how you approach the man of God. But this time around, this woman says, I am going. And she answered and says, it shall be well. And that's where the title of our message is coming from. It shall be well. So let's look at that word well. When she says, it shall be well. Listen, this woman only has one son. And the son has just died. And the husband says, but why are you running after the man of God? Why are you going there? And then she answered and says, it shall be well. The word well is translated, it's translated into peace. It's a payment. It's the finished work. It's a picture of something being restored. So she had hope that her son was going to be restored, right? She had that peace, restitution. Verse 24, and she saddled upon an ass and said unto her servant. Now she gets on a donkey. She says to the servant, drive and go forward. Slack not in thy riding except I bid thee. This is serious business. Do not slack. Keep moving. Except I tell you not to, you need to keep moving towards the man of God. And so she went and came up unto the man of God to Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel, very interesting. Elijah had a showdown at Mount Carmel, where God showed himself when he consumed the sacrifice together with everything that was there. Mount Carmel is a picture where God shows himself. And when it came to pass, when the man of God saw her far off, let's just pause there. It's a picture of God. It's a picture of the father seeing the prodigal son coming far off. God sees us far off, way, way, way far off than our carnal eyes can see. So when Elisha saw her coming far off, he said unto Gehazi his servant, he says, go yonder to the Shunammite. Run, and I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And guess what? She answered Gehazi. She said, it is well. Everything about her was not well. But she answers and says, it is well. You see, She didn't pour out her heart to Gehazi. Listen to what he says in the next verse. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, right there at the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God says, leave her alone. Leave her alone. Her soul is vexed within her. The Lord has hidden it from me and he's not shown me. See, this is the picture of, she didn't pour out her heart to Gehazi, who was the servant of God. But she waited until when she was in the presence of the man of God, who is a representation of Christ and God himself. And then there she pulls out, she gets hold of his feet. And Gehazi tries to push her away. And then he says, leave her alone. God has not shown me what's going on with her. Why her soul is vexed. And she said, did I desire a son, my Lord? She asked him a question. When you came to me and you asked me what I needed, whether you should talk to me on behalf of the king or the captain of hosts, what did I say to you, my Lord? Did I say I want a son? No. Your servant suggested that I don't have a son. That's the work of a servant. To suggest to the people that they need the son, and that's Jesus. And that's what Gehazi did. Gehazi says she does not have the son. Here, she asked the question, he says, did I desire a son? Do we desire Jesus? Most of the times we don't desire Jesus. But by grace, God offers him, who is the desire of all ages, to us. He offers him to us. Just like this woman, we are okay being with our kinship. Sometimes we feel we're not worthy to have the son, and we are never worthy to have the son. We are barren. We're like that woman. But God, by his grace, gives us the son. And she cries, she says, my Lord, did I desire a son? Did I not tell you not to deceive me? Then Gehazi said, then the man of God says, get up thy loins, Gehazi, and take up thy staff and take up my staff in your hands and go your way. If you meet any man, do not salute you. Do not salute them. If they salute you, do not salute back. When it comes to the son, when it relates to the son, you're on a mission for the son, everything comes secondary. Everybody else is secondary when it comes to the being upon the errands of the son, bringing the son to life in the lives of people, bringing Jesus to life. And then he says, lay my staff upon his face. My staff upon his face. This issue of the staff, let's talk about the staff just a little bit. In Exodus, you find there's a staff in Exodus chapter 7. Let's read through verse 19. It says, and the Lord spake unto Moses. Remember, Gehazi has been instructed, go. You meet no one, don't talk to anybody. People talk to you, don't talk back to them. When you get there, introduce my staff on the face of this child. So let's look at this idea of the staff from this verse. In Exodus chapter 7, verse 19. And the Lord spake unto Moses, say unto Aaron, the high priest's staff. Aaron's staff says, take thy rod and stretch out thine hand upon the waters of Egypt, and upon the streams, and upon the rivers, and upon the ponds, and upon the pools of water. Water, a representation of people. And they shall become blood. Water turned into blood. The supremacy of the blood sacrifice of Jesus. Everything else is covered with blood. Everything else, water, sanctification is swallowed up. Is swallowed up in the one sacrifice. The water that cleanses, swallowed up. The reality of having us cleansed in our sanctification process, swallowed up in the reality of justification, the sacrifice of Jesus. the blood. The water becomes blood. And there may be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. Blood all over. Blood. That's the staff. So the staff is supposed to give life. So he says, Gehazi, get my staff, go before the face of the child. It's supposed to give life. Supposed to bring back the blood. In verse 30 of 2 Kings chapter 4, and the mother of the child said, as the Lord liveth, and as thou so liveth, I will not leave thee. What is this telling us? When she says, you know what, you're sending Gehazi to go and wake up my son, but as the Lord liveth, and as your soul liveth, I am not leaving you. You see what this is re-echoing in the scriptures. God is saying, listen, this woman says, I know this Gehazi is your servant. I know this is your servant, but I am not leaving you. This is a representation of Jacob. When Jacob lay holds of God, when he was wrestling, he says, I am not leaving you until you bless me. So she says, as the Lord liveth and thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And he rose up and followed her. This is re-echoing Moses. You see the context of Moses and not leaving. And also Ruth. Ruth clung unto Naomi and says, your people are going to be my people. Your God is going to be my God. Your land is going to be mine. This is the clinging reality that is being shown unto us. And it's also the experience of Jacob, as we've already said. But let's look at the experience of Moses. So in Moses, in Exodus chapter 32, we read through to verse 12 to 16. The idea of I am not going anywhere without you. The idea of I'm not taking any step without you. So Exodus chapter 33 verse 12, and it says and Moses said unto the Lord, see that thou sayest unto me, bring up these people. You've told me to bring up these people, and thou hast not let me know whom thou art sent me, and thou hast not let me know who thou art sent me. And then it says, and thou hast said, I know thee by name, and thou hast also found grace in my sight. It says, God, you have sent me to bring up these people. And I haven't known you, but you have said to me, you know me by name, and that I have found grace in your sight. Now, therefore, Lord, because you've said it, I pray, I beg you, if I have found grace in your sight, show me now thy way, that I may know thee, that I may find grace in your sight. Consider this nation is thy people. Verse 14, and he said, this is God speaking now, responding to the prayer of Moses. And he said, my presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. Rest. Well, you see the meaning of the word rest, well, shalom, one idea. And he said unto him, if this is Moses now speaking, it says in verse 15 of verse 33 of Exodus, and he said unto him, if thy presence go not with me, carry us not henceforth. So it says, if your presence does not go with me, don't carry us anywhere, just leave us alone. And wherein shall it be known here that I and thy people have found grace in your sight? How are people going to know that actually we found grace in your sight, God? Is it not that you will go with us? So shall we be separated, and I and thy people from all the people that are upon the face of the earth. What distinguishes God's people, what's unique about God's people, is God himself. It's his presence. Without God, Without his presence, we are the same with everybody else around. So Moses says, I'm not going anywhere without you. Just like this Shulamite woman says, I am not living here without you. It's a picture of God. It says, I am not going, and this is Jacob. So let's go back to our story in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 31, going down. It says, and Gehazi passed before them and laid the staff upon the face of the child. Gehazi is a zealous servant. Goes and way past before the woman, and the man of God, who is a representation of God himself, is a servant. And when he goes past before him and laid the staff, and neither was there voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him and told him, saying, the child is not awake. This is the zealous attitude of God's servants, wanting to do a work that only God can do. Well, I have the stuff, I have the gospel, I have the stuff. And we zealously go and present it. God, yes, has told us to present it. But there is no life because the master is behind. You went way before him. We fail even with the staff of the master because we've gone before the master. And we fail. There is no life coming to the people. No life. Verse 32, it says, and when Elisha was come into the house, who is a representation of God, behold, the child was dead, and he laid upon his bed. And he went in thereof and shut the door unto him, and he prayed unto the Lord. So he's praying, but listen to what he says. Something interesting begins to happen. In verse 34 and 35, and he went up and laid upon the child. So he laid upon the child and put his mouth upon his mouth, his eyes upon his eyes, his hands upon his hands, and he stretched himself upon the child. He stretched himself upon the child. And the flesh of the child waxed warm. It was cold-heartedness. But all of a sudden, because the man of God lays upon the dead corpse of the child, the flesh become warm. Blood all over. Became warm. Then he returned again and walked in. This is essential. Walked into the house 2 and 4. And went up and stretched himself upon him again. And the child sneezed 7 times. And the child opened his eyes. This is the picture of this child does not have life apart from the stretched out arms of the servant of God, who is the ultimate servant, who is Jesus. Apart from the mouth giving life of Jesus, the eyes and the ears and everything else, the pierced picture of Jesus on the cross stretched out is the life giver to this child. So Jesus imparts unto us his life. This life that we have is a borrowed life. Everything we have is stamped with the crucified, stretched out figure of the life of Jesus that was given as a ransom for many, to purchase many. This is a picture. Jesus imparts. We live because he lives, because of his life. He was raised for our justification. That one-time act, remember, the prophet goes in, the first time he stretched out, the body just waxed warm. Then again he goes back, he went to and fro, and then goes back and stretched himself. That's when the child sneezes 7 times. 7, a picture of what? You make your own conclusions. But it's a picture of the servant of God goes in twice, but Jesus, through the one act of Calvary, he brings life to all. And that is enough. And this is the picture that we're seeing, that this son was revived because of the life of the man of God, which is a picture of the life of Jesus. We are brought back to life. Blood is running again in our veins. Our hearts become warm again. The vessels of stone are filled with blood. The vessels of wood are filled with blood. The whole land is filled with blood because of the one sacrifice, of the blood sacrifice of Jesus. Verse 36 in 2 Kings chapter 4. And he called Geaz, the servant, and he says, call the Shunammite woman. So he called her. And when she came unto him, he said, take up your son. Then she went in, she fell on her feet and bowed herself to the ground. I am nothing. I fell to the ground as a sign of worship. Worship. Worship is to God. And took her son and went out. She worshipped because he did something for her that she couldn't do in herself. That is justification. Justification is the work of God laying the glory of man to the dust. She fell to the ground. I belong to the dust. Glory and honor belongs unto God. So we keep going because of him. Christ if Christ is not our all, then our all is not well. In the midst of trouble, in the midst of sorrow, in the midst of death, in the midst of everything, an assault from the enemy and all this, if Christ is not our all, then our all is not well. Remember the woman? Because of her faith, she says it is well. It shall be well. It is well. And we're told in the book of Hebrews, it was because of faith. Read that great chapter of faith. It was because she had faith. Not because there was anything great about her. The only thing great about her was her faith. And the faith that she had. Even though it might appear to our carnal eyes, these carnal eyes, that things are not well, it is well in Christ, and we need to fix our eyes on Christ. Fix our eyes on Christ, fix our mouth on Christ, fix our hands on Christ, fix our whole entire being on Christ, because he is our entire being. So we fix everything carnal, everything to the eyes, everything, there is everything to be anxious about, there's everything to be depressed about, there's everything to swallow you up. Even though it appears that way, God says, fix your eyes on me. It is well in me. Outside of me, it's not well. In me, it is well. Fix our mouth, our eyes, and our whole being on his being. His being, not our being. We're saved by one being. It is by his grace that we can even say it is well when our carnal reality is telling us everything is not well. When the whispers of the enemy are telling us everything is not well, there's everything wrong. We do not base our reality on this carnal reality that we are in, this carnal nature, our experiences and all this. And no, God says everything is covered up in his blood, that worthy, accepted blood, and that's the blood sacrifice of Jesus. It is well in him. Jesus becomes our well, our peace, our well. I am well in him. So regardless of the enemy and what he says, when you fix your eyes on Jesus, when you hold on to the shield of faith, because that's what she did. Read Hebrews chapter 5, that great chapter on faith. Only 2 incidences are recorded of being brought back to life. And one of them is of this woman by faith. She says it is well. Remember, Jesus is our well, our peace. And we are only well in him. He does all things well, it tells us in the Bible. He is mine and I am his. The Shunammite woman says that every step it is well. Even in the valley, it is well. Even though I walk through the valleys of the shadows of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. Look only to Christ. He is our peace. Let no man strip you of your shield of faith in him. So this was our impromptu study. It is well in Christ. God bless you.